good was that? Give another hand for Oliver. That was brilliant. I don't know about you, there is something about that song that you just can't not dance to, right? I was watching everyone grooving in their seat. It was quite hilarious watching. It was awesome. I am really excited to delve into this afternoon's program with all of you. We have a truly phenomenal international lineup, and I think the conversation up here is going to be truly something to behold. To kick that off, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. He's a writer, a teacher, a business advisor, and an absolute uncontested authority on creativity and innovation. I'm talking, of course, about Sir Ken Robinson. Sir Ken works, woohoo, indeed, absolutely. Sir Ken works with global corporations and governments to help them unlock their creative potential. He led the National Commission on Creativity, Education and the Economy for the UK government, as well as the development of the Creative and Economic Development Plan as part of the peace process in Northern Ireland. Sir Ken's also penned a number of internationally acclaimed books, including The Element, How Finding Your Passion Changes Everything, which is a New York Times bestseller that has been translated into 23 languages. That's no mean feat. He's also the most viewed TED speaker in the history of the organisation. That's pretty incredible. Celebrated as one of the world's most elite thinkers, Sir Ken has received numerous accolades for his work, including a knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II. But as he'll tell you, no doubt, as he just told me, one of the greatest things that's happened to him happened just recently. He's just become a grandfather. Can you welcome to the stage Sir Ken Robinson?
Thank you, Holly. How are you? What? It's fantastic to be here, I have to say. I often come to Canada, and I was recently, a little while ago, in Winnipeg. Is anybody here from Winnipeg? Do you automatically clap yourself if you're from Winnipeg? Yeah. Fantastic city, wonderful people, but there's something odd about Winnipeg. Not the people, but it's the coldest city in the world. Apparently, because it sits on a floodplain from the Arctic, and in the winter, it gets so cold, like -50 plus wind chill, that you're advised not to take deep breaths outside. See, that's a drawback, isn't it? I can't tell you how attached to breathing I have become. And also, in the summer, the whole city is besieged by mosquitoes the size of hummingbirds. And the reason is that all this ice that accumulates on the floodplain in the winter melts and creates these sort of cesspits of mosquito larvae. So the place is bombarded with these lethal insects during the summer, which is the time when you want to go outside and breathe. So I asked the guy showing me around, I said, how long has Winnipeg been here? It's at the junction of two rivers. And I forget exactly now, but it's quite a recent settlement historically. And he said, you know, interestingly, this is one of the few areas where the First Nations people didn't settle. Well, that's a clue, isn't it? Don't you think? If people understand how nature works for 10,000 years, though I don't think so. Absolutely not. I'm not stopping here. Now, I mention it for the following reason. That we have we not, become, to some degree, detached from the world around us, detached from the natural world. I mean, I'm not blaming this all on Winnipeg, don't get me wrong. But for the past 300 years, we've managed to live our lives, as it were, separate from nature. I mean, a lot of us have come to believe that the world really is covered in concrete and that food gets delivered in cellophane. And we live probably in one of the most exciting periods of history, but also one of the most critically challenging periods as well. And the fact is that most of the challenges that we face have been created by us, by human beings. And the capacity to solve them lies with others as well. So this has become a big issue latterly for me about how we address what it turns out are, I think, two related forms of climate crisis. There's the crisis in the natural environment. I think we ought to know that's going on. But there's another one which I want to come to, which is about the cultural crisis. Now, I don't say this out of despair or out of a sense of pessimism, but we do have to face up to the fact that we are probably the most gifted species ever to walk the Earth. And we're going to rely on those gifts pretty heavily if we're to make sense of and engage with the circumstance that we've now created. Now, two things have happened to me in the last year, or last 18 months, that I feel you should know about. One of them is that having lived in America for 18 years, I recently became an American citizen. Now, I don't expect you to applaud that. You know, and obviously, I mean, I could have picked a better time. It was very funny, actually. I went downtown to take the oath of allegiance. And in order to take, if you become a naturalized citizen, you have to take the oath of allegiance, and also you have to pass a test on your understanding and meaning of the Constitution, which is what distinguishes naturalized citizens from members of Congress, from what we can tell. And so I was asked all these questions, and I sailed through it. The other thing is that as part of the naturalization ceremony, we all did, there were 5,000 of us there. I had to promise to bear arms on behalf of the United States. And I did that, I mean, with due deference to, veterans who've actually borne arms. I did it, honestly, in a certain sanguine state of mind. Because I thought, if it ever reaches the point where they need me to bear arms, I mean, it's not going well, is it, at that point? I think it's time to negotiate. So I've done that. And the other thing is that 18 months ago, I became a grandparent. Thank you very much. Thank you. I had very little to do with it, to be honest. I suppose I was an early investor. That's how I think about it. An early adopter. Anyway, we have this wonderful grandchild now, and I found something very interesting, which is this, that all grandparents that we've encountered, because you get flung into the company of other grandparents, who are obviously less attractive and youthful, than I am. But, you get thrown into this company, and it's very interesting that all grandparents think that their child is the most beautiful, gifted, and talented child ever to walk the earth. And I feel good for them that they feel that, And also a little sad, because it turns out it's our grandchild, who is this golden child who's been born into the planet. But having grandchildren really starts to recalibrate or refresh your sense of the miracle, not just of life, which is a miracle, but also of the unique, so far as we can tell, capacities that children are born with, that you were born with, that you have now, that your children will have if you have children, and your grandchildren. So far as we can tell, human beings are the most gifted, certainly the most creative, the most flexible, and far-sighted creatures, so far as we know, ever to walk the earth. And firstly, we underestimate most of our talents, and we fail to discover a greater part of them. But you should never doubt the depth and complexity of these talents. I mean, for example, in the ordinary course of things, in the first 18 months or so of being alive, children learn to speak, human babies. No other creature does, not in the way that we do. And the interesting thing is that nobody teaches them how to do it. If you've got children, you know you did not teach your child to speak. You didn't because you couldn't, because you don't know how you do it either. And also, even if you did, it's far too complicated. Do you know what I mean? You don't sit your child down, do you, at the age of 18 months and say, look, we need to talk. You know, or more specifically, you do. And this is how it works. And you set out, you know, the rules of grammar and syntax and the passive voice. And say, you know, there are 9,000 nouns that you'll have to learn in the next few months, and then there are 5,000 verbs. And by the way, if you modulate the sound of your voice at the end of the verb, you can indicate whether you have done something or whether you're about to do it. That we call those tenses. And don't worry about the subjunctive. Nobody gets it. You know, it's fine. You see, you don't. Children take it in through their skin because they want to and because they can. Can I say, how many of you here speak more than one language? All right. How about 3? 4? 5? Who's got 5? Over there. What languages are they? Do you mind saying? Can you speak up a bit? So German, English, Spanish, Italian, and a bit of Danish. That's not much use, frankly, is it? Honestly. Even a lot of Danish isn't very helpful, to be truthful. Unless you're in Denmark, in which case. We were talking yesterday, coming through the airport, to one of the attendants there who was Danish, and she said she learned English here because it's pointless trying to get anybody else to learn Danish. Some of the Nordic languages are so complicated. But you see, I bet, there isn't time to ask you properly about it now, but you probably learned all these languages because of where you were born, where you were raised. That's the usual thing. The thing is, all of us here could learn 5, 6, 7, 8 languages if we'd been exposed to them at the right time. The fact is we don't very often because we grow up in a monolingual culture, or because, in our case, I'm English, and there's very little point learning another language, frankly, because everybody speaks English, and if they don't, they object to my attempts to speak their language. So they'd say, would you mind not doing that? But what's true of languages is true of music. You could all play multiple instruments. You could all be far more capable in mathematics and science than most of us are. We have a vast variety. Human talents are like the Earth's natural resources. They're highly diverse in all of us. They are often buried beneath the surface, so you have to go looking for them to find them. And when you find them, you have to refine and develop them. It's not enough to be capable of speaking, or to have the capacity for languages. You have to practice and learn them. It's not enough to have a musical capacity. You have to do what's involved before you can perform in that extraordinary way that we heard just before I came out. I mean, that's hours, weeks, years of dedicated practice at something that he plainly loves to do. So we have the capacity. Whether they become abilities is another matter entirely. Now, the reason all of this matters is because we know that there is an almost balanced relationship now between nature and nurture. Children do not come into the world as blank sheets. You know that. If you've got kids, it shows itself really very early on that our children are born with a unique array of talents and interests, capacities. Their personality is pretty clear. Can I ask you, how many people here have got 2 children or more? Okay, well, look, I'll make you a bet, and I will win this bet because I can't lose it. My bet is that if you've got 2 children or more, they are completely different from each other, aren't they? You would never confuse them, would you? Like, which one of you? Remind me. We're going to have this system of color-coded T-shirts at breakfast. It's getting too confusing. Every child is a unique instance in human history, just as you are. We all are. Nobody's ever lived your life before. Nobody ever will. We're a unique confluence of talents, abilities, and circumstances, each one of us. And we all have unique biographies as a consequence. What those biographies turn out to be has everything to do with the talents we discover and the opportunities that surround us and what we make of these opportunities. And the world just now is presenting us with unique opportunities and unique challenges, individually and collectively. A lot of the work I do is based on, I suppose, 3 big themes. One of them is that we're living in times of revolution, and there's no question of that. You heard it from the last presentation from Microsoft. Technologically, the world is moving at an extraordinary clip. Secondly, if we're to meet this revolution, we have to think differently about ourselves and about our children. Then thirdly, we have to do things differently. Now, I was born in 1950 in Liverpool, in England. And I know you don't believe that. No, I heard the intake of breath, you know. How can this be, you're thinking? He is so boyish. You know, but I live in Los Angeles, you know. I've had work done. What can I tell you? This is, you know, very little of this is original, frankly. Growing up in Liverpool, there were 4 gadgets. We had a telephone, we had a television, a radio, and eventually a TV. That was it. That was all you could get from Best Buy, had there been a Best Buy. Think of the technological environment which our children are living in now. This is the point, that our world is being transformed by technology, demography, and ecology, and how all those 3 things are interacting with unpredictable consequences. I gave a talk at TED in 2006, the first one, and I said then that nobody knows what the world would look like in 5 years' time, that's to say in 2011. Well, I mean, you don't have to be, you know, a soothsayer, you know, or a medium to say this stuff. It was obvious. But it's worth remembering that the smartphone didn't come out until 2007. That was the first iPhone. And now people are living as if this was the beginning of civilization, that life was not feasible. It's a mystery that we got on at all without these devices. And they've become totally absorbing, to the point where our social life, our work, our relationships have been utterly changed and transformed. This is the point about technology, I think. Human creativity has always gone hand in hand with the tools at our disposal, always. Great tools, whether it's a plow or an iPhone, they do 2 things. One is they extend our physical reach, so we're able to do things with tools that we're incapable of doing with our own physical resources. You know, so the plow helps to turn over whole strands of land. The telescope allows us to extend our vision. But a really fertile tool does something else. It doesn't just extend our physical capacity, it extends our minds. It enables us to think of things that we couldn't otherwise have conceived of. So, you know, the plow eventually turned over entire civilizations and ways of living. The telescope transformed our understanding of our place in the cosmos. And the internet and all the digital devices at its disposal are similarly changing, extending, and in some cases, marginalizing the way we're connected to the world around us. And AI, by the way, promises to be, as you know, a step change in our relationship with technology, which may enter our bodies, not just surround our bodies. But the thing that I just want to say about technology is this. The consequences are always unpredictable. When Henry Ford was working on the Model T, he did not anticipate OPEC and the climate crisis. He didn't anticipate carbon sequestering. He didn't anticipate people digging up the Arctic to get more oil. He didn't anticipate the freeway system. Why? Because you can't. You can't see ahead. When Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive at the team at Apple were working on the smartphone, they weren't anticipating the proliferation of social media, which came on the back of it. And it's changed the way we see everything. I just came across this, I want to show you this image, if I can remember where to put the clicker. Yeah. I want to show you this image for a couple of reasons. One is to illustrate that this talk has been prepared. I've just wandered in here, you know, off the street. So I came across this recently. It's a fantastic image. The thing is, we weren't anticipating that. But you know what it's like now? If you go into a public space, you'll be doing it in a minute, I absolutely guarantee it. If you go into a public space, people are obsessed with these gadgets. We're spending sort of 7, 8 hours a day staring at these screens and cutting out all the people around us, texting people who are probably across the room. This is unique in the history of human affairs, by the way. And it's now reached the point where if somebody is not looking at their phone in a public place, you get a bit freaked out by it. My wife showed me this recently. I thought this was great. It's true. It's true, though, isn't it? What I mean is, this wasn't anticipated. When the printing press was developed, you know, in the Middle Ages, it was not anticipated that this would lead to a major challenge to the Catholic Church and to the spread of literacy. That wasn't the deal. Television, it wasn't anticipated that it would have the impact it would, and that it would spawn all of the various industries and celebrity culture that it went on to do. Tools do what they're intended for, but then we find all kinds of other uses for them. Now, AI is going to transform radically how we live, think, connect, relate, the work we do, who we do it with, if we do any work at all. I am pretty optimistic that it's not going to be the death of everything. I mean, Jack Ma and others predict that AI will possibly wipe away 40% of current jobs in the service sector, in the professional sector, in medicine. And this is the difference, of course. This isn't just about to take out of our hands mechanical jobs that are thoughtless. It's going to take away jobs that require some kind of judgment. It's already happening in the law. It's beginning to happen in medicine. It will happen in all areas of the service sector. I don't think this is the end of everything, by any means, but it does mean that we're going to have to be particularly fertile in our responses to it. And I believe what we have to think about now is, what is it about us and your children that makes us uniquely human? What is the human advantage? And my big concern about this is education in particular, because education should be the primary way in which we help people discover what lies inside them and helps them to understand the world around them. It's the most formal and intentional process we ever put our kids through and our adults through, so they can maneuver, be fulfilled, engaged, and independent in this world and connect to other people. And the trouble is, the current systems were designed for the Industrial Revolution, and they're based on principles that don't apply in the world that's now coming into play. In this country, in Canada, I know where I am, in Canada, in America, most European countries, in the past 20 years, billions of dollars have been spent in a vain attempt to improve standards in schools through testing and standardization. The whole thing was a bad idea from the beginning. It's been a catastrophe, and it's been demonstrated time and again. And the reason is that children are unique, they're driven by their own talents and interests, and we live in a social world that depends on collaboration and compassion. And those are the qualities we need to begin to cultivate properly. I'll just come back to it, but I think it's a major issue here that we have to think of solving the right problem. We can spend an awful lot of time solving the wrong problem. And I think this is what's happened in education. People thought that the real problem is academic standards aren't high enough. We have to test and test and test. We have to narrow the curriculum to mathematics and science. And then, having thought they'd solve that problem, they find there's a much bigger problem that this didn't address at all, which is the human crisis, the crisis of purpose, of meaning, of fulfillment. And by the way, if you doubt it, we know that from the World Health Organization, that although we're materially better off now than at any other time in history, one of the great epidemics that's sweeping the world is depression. Depression among human populations who lack a sense of purpose, companionship, and connection. So we've got to solve the right problem. I came across this, I love this little video, nothing to do with this, but it seems to me it's a wonderful example of an attempt to solve a problem, then not knowing what to do once you've solved that problem.
You got it!
Yeah, exactly, now what? Cracked it. So consider a child. Think what we're dealing with here. Children are the most extraordinary, curious, creative, and bountiful creatures, so far as we know, that have ever walked the earth, and we're the adult version of that. I just want to show you one other thing, because if we're talking about what makes us human, and I think we have to recognize, I believe, that human life, human culture has always been driven forward by our relationship with technology. But when we talk now, and so it will be, and so it should be, but when we talk now of artificial intelligence, this is a figurative expression, I think. Machines now, and I doubt they will ever become, by the way, similar, but machines certainly now are not intelligent in the sense that you are. I think to call machine intelligence intelligence is a metaphor. It's not a factual comparison. I mean, they do very evidently smart things, much better than we do. But they're driven not by feeling, not by relationships, but by a relentless process of logic moving at a rapid clip. It was interesting, wasn't it, when Kasparov who was beaten by Big Blue in that first landmark chess game, he left the room in tears, having been beaten by the computer. The computer just sat there humming away quietly. It didn't say either upset or pleased about the situation. We are driven by, among other things, feeling and by multiple forms of intelligence. What drives us very often is the first things I want to mention, which is curiosity. Again, this isn't my grandchild, but I came across this. I'll tell you what this is. It's a very short clip of, I think it was Christmas Day. I saw this on YouTube, and this little toddler is given a present. He opens it, and it's a banana. That's it. That's not what I want you to pay attention to. Just look at his reaction to the banana. I don't know why his parents gave him a banana, by the way, but check his reaction.
Open it.
Banana! Banana! I got banana!
Yay!
I got banana! I got banana!
Really?
Yeah, I got banana home with me.
You're gonna bring it
I got
home?
banana home.
What do you say?
Thank you. I got my banana.
That's fantastic, isn't it? You know, I think we should take another look at bananas, honestly. I think we're taking them for granted. I certainly am. You know, but isn't that wonderful? That joy, the exuberance of discovery, the excitement of seeing something new and something different. We're born with that, and all the great creative work comes from seeing things fresh, and it's a feature of childhood. I mean, obviously, this starts to wear off a little bit as kids grow up, and frankly, it's just as well. You don't want this going on into your 30s, do you? I mean, you'd be frightened to go to restaurants, wouldn't you? You'd just never get served. But curiosity is one of our big driving forces, and it's what systems of education do a poor job of cultivating. I'm not saying teachers, systems do it. Can I ask you, how many of you here went through your education and came out feeling you'd really discovered all the things you're good at with a clear sense of your course in life? All right. Not many. How many of you here can remember a teacher who had a positive impact on your life? You see, that's the point, isn't it? The system's difficult, but it's the relationship with teachers that really matters. And it's all about that. It's about relationships. We can all tell the story about this teacher or that teacher who saw something in us that perhaps somebody else didn't, or lit us up with an enthusiasm for their own discipline, but connected somehow. Curiosity is one of the driving forces of human achievement. A second that education must attend to if we're to rediscover and reclaim our humanity is something I've talked about a lot. I don't want to talk about it very much right now, is creativity. But it's worth noting this, I think, that creativity is not some exotic capacity that a few people have and other people don't have. If you're a human being, it came with the kit. Creativity is not something that's confined to a particular discipline. Creativity is the application of imagination, and it's more than anything else, it's imagination that sets us apart. Imagination is the ability to bring into mind things that aren't present to our senses. And with it, we can anticipate the future, we can revisit the past, we can look into other people's points of view, we can empathize with them. Creativity is putting that to work. Most creatures live in the world as they find it. We don't. We look beyond our current circumstances and try to change it. But when I mention the senses, how many senses do you think you have? How many senses have you got? It's not a trick question. 5, thank you very much. Any more? 6? Okay, look. What are they? Look, I'm talking about real senses, senses that have obvious organs that do it. Like eyes that see, hearing, taste, touch, smell. People will often say there's a sixth sense, which is like intuition, which is a kind of spooky sense, isn't it? That girls have more of, that's the idea. The thing is, any physiologist will tell you, you have at least 9 senses, not 5. At least 9. One of them, which you're using right now, which people forget to mention, I've asked dancers and I've asked gymnasts and sports people in every area of athletics about this. A key sense that you cannot function without is balance, which is moderated by the inner ear, and without it you couldn't sit where you are, you couldn't get into the room, you couldn't leave the room. There's the sense of proprioception, which is your orientation in space. One that we never mention is a sense of temperature. We're equipped to live within a certain range of temperatures, and you're feeling it right now. You'll feel it more in the winter if you stay in Calgary, and certainly if you go to Winnipeg. But the reason we think we've got 5 senses is because we've heard it said so often, we've stopped thinking about it. We simply take it for granted. So if we take something as obvious as our physical senses for granted and get that wrong and underestimate them, how much more likely is it that we're underestimating something more complex like intelligence and creativity and compassion? And these seem to me to be among the distinctively human capacities. Our capacity to see new possibilities, which results, by the way, in the fact that as human beings, we always live in virtual space. We don't just live in the world, we have ideas about the world, we have theories about the world, we create values and belief systems, languages to incorporate them and to communicate them and to express them and share them. 6,000 languages currently spoken on Earth, all of them with their own nuances and differences in the way that we're sensitized to the world around us. We live, as the great cultural anthropologist Clifford Geertz once said, human beings are suspended in webs of significance that we ourselves have woven. Every culture is enmeshed in its way of seeing. And as we live in the world that gets more complicated, understanding how other people see is becoming more, not less important. Understanding how we relate to the world around us and how we see it and conceive of it is becoming more important, not less important. And I believe that these 4 main capacities, there are many more, but creativity, curiosity, compassion, and the final one, collaboration, are the deep human powers that we have to focus on now as we move into this uncertain future and try and equip not just my grandchildren, but your grandchildren for this world they will see that they have to live in and make something of. And I believe that we can do this, providing we reframe ourselves and our capacities. Thank you.
Ken Robinson, ladies and gentlemen. Phenomenal. Thank you, Ken. Thank you. What a brilliant address. So many takeaways. You can see all the notes I was taking while Ken was talking. Some of my favorite quotes and takeaways, and I look forward to reading on social media what yours were. Human talents are like natural resources. They're highly diverse. They're all too often buried, and when you find them, you have to refine and develop them. We all have capacity, but whether they become capabilities is another matter entirely. Curiosity is one of the biggest drivers of humanity, and yet our systems of education do a poor job of cultivating it. And I love this phrase, creativity is the application of imagination, and imagination is what sets us apart. Thank you so much for your wonderful words. We look forward to welcoming you back on the panel later, but can you please, as we head to the break, give a rousing applause to Ken Robinson. Thank you once again. Well, Ken.